everybody. Welcome back for episode 2 of our review. I get. We don't even have a real full name, do we? It's the Rote Reviews, I guess. I don't know.
Reviews.
Rote Reviews?
Yeah,
okay,
Rote Reviews.
We'll go with that. All right. So welcome to episode 2 of Rote Reviews, okay? This time around, it's one of my absolute personal favorites. There are a ton of really interesting stories that are behind the scenes that I will tell towards the end of this episode that will color your experience as you're watching it. Not in a bad way. It's just, there are a lot of wow factor that happened with this film for the Bratt brothers as they produced it, and Benjamin was in it, starred in it, but his brother Peter was the one who directed it. And it's really fascinating. One of which I actually read in the newspaper at the time they were filming. I didn't even know what the movie was about, but I remember reading this article about one of the actors. And it's really surprising who it is in the movie that we're going to talk about. But the movie we're going to talk about is called La Mission. It is produced by Benjamin Bratt, and his brother Peter directed it. I believe Peter wrote it. I haven't looked up the credits. I should actually look that. I'll actually put a correction here so you can see whether or not I did it right. But it's such a great movie. It on so many levels, especially for a Latinx like myself, to actually see, even though it wasn't my total experience, I understand it to a great degree. And so my opening statement about it is, this is, I'll tell you right now, my rating is 5 quills for this one, because it's just so emblematic of my culture. It's so emblematic of life in San Francisco in the Mission, which is what La Mission stands for. And I get the lowrider culture. I all of that stuff. Just, I could smell the food when they were eating. I knew exactly what they were having, what it was like, what went into the prep. It's like there was culturally, it was so spot on, even with all the Aztec influence that comes into the movie, the Indio part of it, where they would just expound upon the culture, the ancestry of the culture, the non-European ancestry of the culture. And it was actually, small story, it was actually debuted at the Native American Film Festival. And from what I gathered, did quite well. So there's that. So that's my opening thoughts on it. Vance?
For me, it was educational. We'll get into the hows and whys in a little bit, but it wasn't a family style I'm familiar with. It wasn't a culture I'm familiar with. It wasn't a situation I'm familiar with. So for me, it was educational. It was also nice to finally finish it, because in 2009, when it came out, I broke my arm and had started watching it during my recovery. Yeah, right? Lovely, isn't it? I'm a Franken arm. There's a fun story behind that too, actually. But no, I had started watching it during my recovery, but I don't remember if I fell asleep or something, like pain pulled me away or something, but I never actually finished it. So it was nice to finish it.
And did it, I'm just curious, because there's actually a film in my family's history that we collectively as a family, it's the Two Mrs. Carols, and it's with Humphrey Bogart and I forget, Barbara Stanwyck, I think? I can't remember the lady's name. Anyways, my family has tried to watch that movie on 4 separate occasions, and each time we've watched it, something has happened that prevented us from seeing the end. So my family still hasn't seen the end of that movie. And my mom said she remembered seeing it when she was a little girl in the theater, but she can't remember how it ends either. So yeah, so I totally get that. I totally get how that could be a thing.
And actually, I completely understand why this is one of your favorite movies, because of the ending.
Yes. It's jumping into our general discussion. There's so many things I love about this film. For one, the acting is top notch. It's well played. I think it's beautifully cast. And see, the thing is, a small story that I was going to say for later, but it's important in the conversation now. The Bratt brothers grew up in the Mission. That's their neighborhood. That's where everything in their lives happened. And there's another story tied to that I will tell later. But they did an incredible job of evoking what the mission is about. They also did an incredible job about highlighting the gentrification of that community and what is happening. And it's happening all over San Francisco. San Francisco is going through, there's a video out by Nancy Pelosi's daughter, actually, called San Francisco 2.0. And what has happened is the tech boom of San Francisco has created enormous wealth. And most of the people who work, even in Silicon Valley, they live up in San Francisco because that has the name, the prestige. That's where they want to set their families and settle down and that kind of thing.
The landlord says you've been complaining about me working on my cars in front of the house.
Well, on the sidewalk, actually.
And what, you couldn't talk to me direct?
I did talk to you direct, remember? In fact, in the 2 weeks I've been here, I think I've had to ask you to move your car at least half a dozen times.
Yeah, and when you asked me, I moved it too, didn't I?
No, you didn't. But that's not the point.
Then why don't you tell me what is?
Jay, I really don't want to argue with you.
What are you arguing with you? You told me moving my car ain't the point, so I'm asking you, what is?
The point is that this is a public sidewalk on a personal garage space, which means it belongs to everyone, not just you.
This is about a bitch. You know how long I've been in this neighborhood, in this house?
I don't want to do this.
26 years, all right?
Meaning what? It entitles you to do whatever you want?
I'll tell you what it means. It means that after all you little hipster and new money types get tired of slumming it, I'm still gonna be here. ¿Me entiendes?
So two things are happening in San Francisco because of it. And this movie actually is part of that discussion. I thought that was another interesting aspect that the Bratt brothers brought in, was the fact there is an erosion of their community because of this newfound tech wealth and how people want to move into these communities that are, I don't want to say they're depressed. They're that's a word I can use that works. They're just, they're not, they're not St. Francis Wood, which is where the movie does go with the white boyfriend. That's St. Francis Wood. That is old San Francisco money. That is, it's almost like a gated community, except there's no gate. It's just this huge, like, stuccoed and, with statues at the top. It says St. Francis Wood. It gives that feeling that it is a gated community. It's very wealthy. It sits on the hillside of Twin Peaks, so it has the most beautiful views of the city. And there's a reason why you can tell all the wealthy who have been in San Francisco for generations that's where they settled. It's well worth it. It's a beautiful part of San Francisco. Anyways, that's one of the things I loved about it, is that they brought in this gentrification through one of the characters in the story when she moves in and she's starting to kind of flesh out her place and everything. And then there are others you see through the course of the movie where they've moved in, and the Latinos even like comment on it. And I'll use Latino for the most part in this because it's evocative of that generation. They don't use Latinx. That's something I've adopted, but it's the youngins that do it, not the older generation. So,
well, and when the movie came out, that wasn't a thing yet.
Yeah, true. Yeah. It's anyways, so that's kind of where I want to start off, but go ahead and tell what you learned about it.
Well, I'd like to back up a little bit. When she moves into the neighborhood, I never got the feeling that she was money. I mean, she works for a women's shelter.
No, she's not. But you see a truck and other people moving in that go by.
True.
So they didn't do it overtly, but for people who live in the city, we understand what that is. And the gentrification of these cultural minorities that live there. San Francisco's a hodgepodge. There is a Russian community there. There's a Vietnamese community there. You really understand why San Francisco is the way it is and how multicultural it is and why it's so accepting of all these people, because San Francisco was founded on the gold rush era, and it was people who had money from the East, and they came out here because they wanted to establish something here. But there were also people who literally were the black sheeps of their family, and they came out here and established themselves, tried to get wealthy. So San Francisco has always had this duality about it. The people who have and have more, and the people who don't, who strive for that. And I know that happens in a lot of cities, but San Francisco, because it's everything shoved up on that tiny peninsula, it's only 26 miles across. The communities that are established literally have boundaries. You can see it as you drive through the areas. You know where La Mission is. You know where the Russian community is. It's very, very, very visually prevalent. And yeah, it's the fact that people are moving in, and Angela Pelosi's movie really talks about how it's actually, it's not saying that it was high levels of crime in the city of San Francisco, but because of the gentrification, all of the culture that made San Francisco have this mystique is now ebbing away, because you're getting an influx of a ton of people who have never lived there. This is their first time moving in there, and it is changing the dynamics of the city. So in a way, this is kind of a love letter from the Bratts to the community that's still there.
So, having never lived there, that didn't stand out to me. I mean, I saw that the obvious points that they're trying to show, but the subtext didn't stand out. So, here's the hard conversation and the warnings for people. There is very violent homophobia in this film. There is violence in this film. And that stood out to me more because it was alien to what I've lived. And there's hatred. There is pure hatred and loathing in this film.
There's also a lot of love.
There is.
There is. His tío and his tía, when the Latino boy comes out, they literally, you see them moving, and it's actually, they're part of the dialogue of how it turns around for their nephew.
Che?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, just if you're sensitive to those things, this may not be the film for you, because it is the core, especially the central core of the middle of the movie.
Right.
Shut
the fuck up!
What the hell is that?
I said fucking let me go!
From now on, you're fucking dead to me!
Fucking hate you! I'm a fucking ignorant asshole!
Fucking disgrace! Did you know you got such a fucking hot dog? Tell him!
I fucking hate you!
Stop this! Y'all enjoying yourselves? Jesus Christ. Get some ice on this.
Fucking hands off! Fucking business!
You touch me again, and I'll have your ass arrested so quick it'll make your head spin.
Come on, bro. She's right. That's enough.
You better get out of my motherfucking way, Gary. I swear to God, I'll fucking hurt you, man.
Nephew. That's enough. Come on now.
And it's, there's also, because of the battered women's shelter that's mentioned in it, there's violence against women, which also is something that needs to be aware of. I'm glad you took it in that manner, that it was educational. It was something for you to absorb, because I know you have a story that you've been thinking about doing that deals with the Latino culture. And that's pretty prevalent no matter where you are as a Latino. Even if it doesn't happen to you like it didn't happen to me, it is something that I am very aware of when I go into those parts of town. Here in San Diego, it's Logan Heights area. It's, down in the barrio. Those areas, I know exactly how to behave when I'm in those areas. And that's just not to say, that there's bullets flying, and it's not like
No.
that. But there is a cultural purveyance of these are the rules. You know what the rules are. Don't push the rules. So, what else did you think about it?
As with any good story, I love the character growth.
Mm-hmm.
And Che's growth obviously is the most visible, but his son also figures out who he is and what he stands for, and that was important too.
Right, and he doesn't really veer away from it, even though he goes through what he goes through in the movie, which is a violent act. And
A couple.
so, yeah. One with the family, and then one external to the family. I liked the elements at the school that you got to see what school life was like for them in the mission. It's really interesting. Just from a geographical, just you get an idea of where the mission is in relation. Because, like I said, it's only a 26-mile wide peninsula. You're never far from any other community. It's literally they're layered on top and butt up against each other. The mission actually sits probably less than 2 minutes away from the financial district. So on either side of Market Street, you have this total disparity and inequality of wealth, and it's really evident. So
we should probably have given a bare bone structure of what the movie's actually about. We've talked about all kinds of things around it.
Well, I'm going to insert other, movie clips so people get an idea of what we're talking about. But generally, it's a coming out story that you not only experience from the son's part, but you experience it from the father's aspect of it and his struggle with it because of how he was raised and how the culture is. And it's actually, I think one of the most beautiful speeches in it comes from his uncle, who has a conversation with Che about his son, who has a physical disability.
If you're asking me if I think God's punishing you for something you already did your time for, then my answer is no, I don't. God don't have to punish, homie. We do that one good enough on our own. Watch out. When Rene Jr. was born and the doctors told us about his condition, I was thinking exactly what you are right now. God's punishing me for all my sins, for all the shit I did or didn't do. Why else would he give me a defective son, right? When they brought him home from the hospital, I didn't even want to hold him, homie. I couldn't. It almost broke me and Nana apart. Serio. Then one night he stopped breathing. I mean, we had all these fancy machines and medications. Todo el pedo, man. There wasn't shit I could do. So I prayed. I mean, I got down on my knees and I begged, homie. Not for his heart to be normal or for him to even breathe on his own. Chale. I just wanted him to live, man. I wanted him to live so I could pick him up and love him. That's it. Just let him live and I'll be happy. Hey, ¿qué decía tu mamá, homie? De la espina y el dolor crece la flor. De la espina y el dolor crece la flor, mijo. ¿Recuerdas, carnal?
Simón.
And how he actually reminds him that it was his culture and his faith that got him through that. And, and Che also struggles with alcoholism. So that's another big aspect of the story. But anyways, it's basically a coming out story in that the son never gets a chance to come out. He's kind of revealed as out. And his father discovers something, and everything spirals from there very quickly. And but yet I think it's very interesting, as you say, Che's growth in it. I mean, he goes from this to this. I mean, it's phenomenal by the end of it. You can see his is probably the most moving. For me, it was the most moving aspect of the story. It really is Benjamin Bratt's movie in every sense of the word. He's always present, even when he's not on screen. He's always present.
Absolutely.
So, should I tell my little stories?
Yeah, go for it. Because
Okay.
I don't even know these.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll start off with the first one. That there's a guy who is pretty much the gangster in the movie. The interesting story about, and this is what I read in the Chronicle at the time when they were filming it. The guy who plays, and all of the actors, because this is an independent film, a lot of the actors supplied their own costumes, from their own wardrobe and stuff. Well, the guy who played the gangster, I forget what his name is in the movie. I should have looked this up. I'll put it up here. And he actually, in real life, is a drama student at the local college. And he was en route to film, I believe it was the sequence at the park where the guys are all playing a game of hoops. And so he was dressed for that. And he's not in a gang. He never was in a gang. He is exactly the opposite. He's very much like Che's son in real life. He very much is that kind of person in real life. He was on the bus riding to the location in the mission. So he didn't even live in the mission. And he was riding the bus, and some gangsters got on the bus, saw how he was dressed, and made assumptions about him, and they actually started beating him up on the bus.
Wow.
Not knowing that he was just filming the movie, and it was his costume, for the shots he was going to do. And he's very much the opposite of that. And I remember reading it, and I remember going, wow, that is just so messed up, And a lot of people, even the community, responded that way at the time. They had interviews and some people talked about it. And even the actor had some comments about that. And he said, if anything, it really helped him hone his character, because he saw the hardness coming at him and he had to deal with it. So, yeah, that's one of the stories behind it. The other one that I think is just so tinged with magic realism. This one blew my mind. So you remember the woman who played the gangster guy's mother, the one you see at the ofrenda when they're actually, doing the prayer and you have all the Aztec dancers and stuff.
Yep.
That woman is also the voice you hear singing the melodic kind of native humming that goes on in it. They had been looking for, I think he said it was like 6 months or so. They were trying to find a vocalist to do that in the movie. And the Bratt brothers auditioned many people, and it just wasn't gelling. It wasn't coming. And they were in Venice Beach in California, which is a suburb of LA. They were in Venice Beach, California, and they were at a bar. And a band, this is in the afternoon, a band was coming in and they were going to play later on that night. So they were doing sound checks. And as the Bratt brothers were trying to compare notes and figure out where they're going to go with this problem, the lead vocalist, that woman, started singing and vocalizing just to test the sound and everything. And they heard her and went, oh my God, that's it. That's the sound. That's what we've been looking for. So they approached her and talked with her about the project, what they were doing. Turns out, here's the magical realism part. Turns out she grew up a block away from the Bratt brothers in the Mission. I know. It was like, even they said, and they got chills when she revealed that to them. So when you see her in the movie, it's quite magical with all of the Aztec influence stuff that they're doing, and you hear her voice, just knowing that she grew up a block away from the Bratts. She didn't really know them at the time. I think she was slightly older than they were, so she would have graduated from high school before them or whatever. But she didn't move in their circles. And yet they're in Venice Beach, California, lamenting over the fact they couldn't find a proper vocalist to do this job, heard her, had this conversation with her, and found her family was a block away from theirs. I mean, just,
That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, that movie has some, and there are wonderful interviews on YouTube with the Bratt brothers talking about the show and about the making of the movie. So I highly recommend, if people have time, they should search it out on YouTube. That there are some great stories that they tell about the making. Those are the big ones that I wanted to bring up, because for me, they really color my experience with the film. All of the old style music, the old school R&B, all of that stuff is very, very much a part of my growing up. I can't remember how many family events, and when I say family, I mean extended family.
Sure.
And it's very much like the lowrider sequence where they're out by the water with all the cars and everything. That's a typical Latino family event. It's on that scale. And it's just a lot of people having a really good time, but because of the look of the lowrider culture and the way that it appears to people, it's something to be feared. But that's when, if you're in it and a part of it, you will find some of the most loving people you have ever met in your life. And you have to realize these are dedicated artisans. They literally pour their spirit into these cars, and make sure that they evoke the pride of the Latino culture. So, yeah. So I already said I gave it 5. What are you giving it?
I'm giving it a 4. Because one, it was a hard watch, which is why everybody should watch it. Absolutely why everyone should watch it.
Big trigger warnings. Yep. And I'll list them here so that people know what the triggers are.
But in addition to just the triggers, though, in terms of being a white boy from the Midwest, I want to know about more, more people, more cultures, more everything. And I think everybody needs to do that.
Right.
White culture sort of rammed down everybody's throats, so go learn something else.
Yes. And this is a great movie for people, for our author friends who would like to write about the Latino culture. It's not every Latino's experience, but it is evocative of the overarching culture and how queerdom fits into that. Even in One Day at a Time, when they bring up the whole thing about being gay, how did all the women respond? We don't talk about it.
Right.
That's part of the culture. We know it exists. We know it's there. It's just, so-and-so's with so-and-so. Oh, they just friends? That's how it works. So, I think it's a great movie for our author friends who have been on rote. If they really want to see something that is evocative of Latino culture. And like I said, even for me, when they would sit and eat, all that, I knew exactly what those spices and what that food smells like. I knew exactly, it was just, being in their kitchen just brought back so many memories of being with my grandmother. And having that kind of influence. The culture is deeply tied to the food. And as it is with most cultures. But it's
Right.
For someone like me growing up with it, even though there is the violence and everything, those moments and the moments with his Theo and Thea who are helping him out, it is something that I think is really great. I will say we didn't cover, and that's probably my fault, but the coming out story deals with the fact that Che's son has a relationship with a white boy from St. Francis Wood, which is
Yes.
old San Francisco money, which are people that are very accepting. They're very, very, so you can tell from the aspect of the boyfriend's mother, she was very protective of what her son had. And that is very San Francisco. That part of it is extremely San Francisco. There is it's weird because there is that dichotomy. There are those who would still do queer people harm in San Francisco. It's not a perfect utopia, but through the gentrification, through pervading white Protestant presence in San Francisco, that is a thing. Of course, we have to balance it with the Karen who questioned the guy of color who had the house that he wrote Black Lives Matter, and all that spiraled. That was just
Right.
yeah. So there is that dichotomy. That's kind of what I'm bringing up. Well, I gave it 5. You gave it 4.
Go see it if you, as long as it's not gonna, hurt you to watch it. Please go see it.
Yes, definitely. Major thumbs up.
All right. What are you going to remind people to do this time?
Oh, remember to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about it. We will be doing these once a week. We've already got 2 in the can as of the filming of this one with this episode. So we will make sure that they come out on Tuesday. Every Tuesday is going to be our video reviews. And then every Friday on rotepodcast.com is the audio interviews with our authors and creators and screenwriters and so on and so forth. So definitely like, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye.